I am Dave, the Amateur Magus. On this channel, I talk all about the mechanics behind ceremonial magic, occultism, esotericism, and the mechanics behind everything you can find within a dusty old grimoire. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe and share this video around with everyone you think might enjoy it. If you really enjoy this video, feel free to subscribe to me over on Patreon, and if you are watching this over on the Patreon, you have my thanks for your continued support. So, I've already covered Mars and Saturn and Venus, and now we probably should cover the other planets, but before we do that, I want to cover what the pairs are. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing because there's a lot of different ways you can segment them off. However, for the most part, the 7 traditional planets of astrology are going to have a couple of pairs to them. Now, these pairs are going to be a little bit different depending on what you're working with, but by and large, these are the most commonly accepted ones. So, the important thing to know is that in traditional astrology, there are 7 planets. And these 7 planets are, going from lowest to highest, the Moon, which is considered a planet in this system, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, which is also considered a planet, just like the Moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And of these, they're going to be paired. Now, the most common pairings are going to be the luminaries, which are the Sun and the Moon, the planets that give off their own light. Next up, we're going to have the malefics, and then we have the benefics. Now, of these planets, the luminaries are going to be the Sun and the Moon, the malefics are going to be Mars and Saturn for the lesser and greater malefic, and with the benefics being Venus and Jupiter for the lesser benefic and the greater benefic, respectively. Now, it's important to know what these do and why they are paired this way, and it's also important to note that in this schema, Mercury is in its own category. It is not part of the luminaries, the benefics, or the malefics. However, it is in this weird in-between of all 3. Now, the reason for this is going to be because the malefics are going to be the most hostile planets, the benefics are going to be the most beneficial planets, that's, obviously, and the luminaries are going to be the kind of in-between mediating king and queen of the planetary powers. Now, Saturn has a unique relationship with the luminaries themselves because Saturn is the darkness to the light of the luminaries. This is why you see Cancer and Leo being opposite 2 of the Saturnian signs, because the luminaries make up one pair and Saturn makes up their opposing pair. And if you look at those 3 as being a kind of union pair, they form the trifecta of the father being Saturn, the mother being the moon, and the son being the sun. Now, it's important to notice that if you look at the zodiac, you'll find that the sun is not always in opposition to Saturn, and neither is the moon. That is because the moon, sun, and Saturn have a very interesting relationship where they have to work together a lot more often than the other opposites. Now, the other opposites are going to be Mercury, which is in opposition to Jupiter, and Mars, which is in opposition to Venus. Now, there's no points for guessing why the sign of masculinity is opposite the sign of femininity. However, it is important to notice that Mercury and Jupiter are also in opposition to each other. So, in this regard, this is kind of an interesting case. And the reason for this one is because Jupiter is the big, slow planet, where Mercury is the fastest planet. They're also For putting it a different way, Jupiter is the planet of wisdom, Mercury is the planet of intelligence, and I will let you all ponder on why that would be a good definition, considering that Jupiter is the planet of philosophy. But the reason why the malefics and the benefics exist is because Saturn is going to be the greater malefic and rules over restrictions, darkness, concealing things, bindings, restrictions, contracts, and all things. Oh, it also rules over death and decay. Now, Mars is going to rule over basically everything associated with violence and destruction of any capacity, as well as lust and physical intercourse. So, Mars is going to be the more destructive of the two, but Saturn is kind of the overarching bad guy of the planetary powers. Now, I say that Saturn and the luminaries have to work together often, and the reason for this is because without the Saturn, the luminaries can't really exist. There can't be light without darkness, and there cannot be darkness without light. So that is why that is. Now, for the benefics, you're going to have Jupiter and Venus, and these are going to be the wonderful, loving planets. Jupiter, the big guy, who's going to take hits for you, and he's going to expand your knowledge. He's going to be the one who helps you be the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. And Venus is going to be the loving goddess on the mountaintop. As I said in the previous video, she's going to give you love, luxury, and beauty. But there is always a catch to all things regarding saying that one planet is purely good and purely bad. For without the restrictions of Saturn's, we would not have bones. We would not be able to move. We would not even have physical reality. Without Mars, we would not have the energy to move. We would not have anything resembling honor. Mars is the thing that keeps us in the social contract, and Saturn is the one who has that contract written in full in the Akashic records. Meanwhile, Venus and Jupiter have their own problems as well, for too much of Venus causes envy. They say that every rose has its thorns, and as we know with the planetary power of Venus, there is no wrath like a woman's scorn. And that is possibly why Venus can be as, if not more destructive than her counterpart in the form of the planet Mars. They are both the lesser and greater benefic, but Venus has her own destructive capabilities as well. Now, we haven't talked much about Jupiter, but Jupiter likes to push everything to the limit. And if you push everything to the limit, sometimes you get overwhelmed, or, worst case scenario, you get excess. And that is the problem with the planetary power of Jupiter. But what of the luminaries, I hear you asking? Well, the sun is the greater luminary, and the moon is the lesser luminary. That being said, without either one of them, we would not be able to see. We would not be able to see in the darkness without the moon, who guides us through dreams, and we would not be able to see in the day without the sun, who guides us during the day. Now, the moon is said to be the ruler of night because primarily when the sun is down, the moon takes over, and when the sun is up, they are the ruler of the day. They are the king of the sun, or the king is the sun, and the moon is the queen, as it were. And they, of course, have their negative aspects as well. The moon is going to be the emotional roller coaster planetary power, of course, as we all know. The moon affects such wonderful things as the tides, and depending on which interpretation you agree with, I tend to prefer to believe that the moon is associated with the elemental powers of water, as it is the emotional side. Agrippa says it's Earth because it's actually being affected on by the astral waves. It's easier to just agree that it's water. Now, the sun is going to be the fiery planet. It's a gigantic ball of nuclear fusion, as it were, which means that it could potentially be viewed as air, as can the moon if you're looking at it Kabbalistically. That being said, the luminaries are both going to be air signs or water or fire signs, depending on how you view them, depending on if you care about zodiacal rulership, But it's important to note that the sun is also the planetary power associated with burning, purification, and pride. So if the sun becomes too out of whack, it starts to purify things that don't need to be purified, and it usually does this through its right arm, that being Mars. Now here's where we get into the interesting thing, because there are more than just these when it comes to planetary pairings. There is actually a unique set of planetary pairs in the Ars Pauline, which does not follow the traditional Venus, Jupiter, Mars and Saturn, Sun and Moon combo. Jupiter and Mercury are paired in this system, as are Saturn and Venus, bizarrely enough, and Mars and the Moon are paired together. Now, this is not the first time that this is going to happen. However, the sun is left out in this case, and the reason for this is because there are secret, hidden mysteries associated with those planetary rulership. Saturn and Venus being the most understandable one, because Saturn and Venus both have to do with the concept of love. Saturn being, Saturn and Venus are going to both be associated with love and life in a bizarre way. Now, you could argue that all of the planetary relationships have a unique spin to them. You could argue that all of the different planets have a unique understanding if you meditate upon the connection between them. The most notable ones, though, are going to be Saturn and Venus, Moon and Mars, and depending on which system you're going with, if you're going with the Ars-Pauline system, obviously I said Mercury and Jupiter, which is basically the formula for Hermetic magic right there. But if you're going by the Golden Dawn formula, it is actually Mercury and Sun, and they have a relationship in and of themselves. Now, it is important to note that when you look at these different pairings, one planet is always left out because you have 7 planets, 3 pairs each. There are only 2 planets in a pair. That leaves 1 left out because there is an odd number of planets. And in the original system, I said that Mercury is left out. In the Ars-Pauline system, the Sun is left out. In the Golden Dawn system, Jupiter is left out. And there is a interesting dynamic there with all of the planetary powers that I will allow all of you to meditate upon, because it's a type of gnosis. And what I mean by gnosis is that I literally cannot explain it to you, because there are some things that occultists cannot explain, and some things you just need to learn through either finding them or meditating upon them. So, that being said, I hope this has given you more room to look into things, and I hope this inspires you to look into these different wacky pairings of planets that we have in the astrological field. I have been Dave, the Amateur Magus, once again. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and share it along with everyone you think would enjoy it. Consider subscribing to the Patreon down in the link below, and once again, if you are watching this on the Patreon, you have my continued thanks for your continued support. We also have a Discord server now. Discord server, the link is on my Twitter. It is pinned on my Twitter, and it is the pinned message on the Patreon at the moment. So if you were not aware of that, go take a look at that. And so I've been Dave, the Amateur Magus. Hope you're having a good day. If you're not having a good day, hope your day gets better, and I hope you found something useful in this video. Take it easy.